Ali. How are
Hello.
you? How are
I'm
you?
good. I'm good,
Good, good.
Fernando. What about you?
All good, thank you. All is well, thank you very much. How are things in Aden?
Well, things seems good. Everything seems good here in Aden, especially Fernando, since the government just came back and good things have have been going on. Good works just started. I mean, it's really we are really optimistic.
Tamam, tamam. And thanks for the video. Thanks for the video from the beach this morning. I know you
How
tweeted.
how,
You
how
tweeted.
was it?
Good, good, good. We I posted. I uploaded it. So I know you tweeted about it was a rainy morning in
Yeah.
Aden. So then we had this little video from you from the beach. So it looks like
Yes.
some people were having a good time.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Good, good, good. So it's our first episode, and a little reminder that we're currently today we're recording as we read the news of the passing of Sheikh Sinan Abu Lahum. So we want to
Yeah.
send our deepest condolences to the family in Yemen, in Cairo, in Amman, wherever they may be. You know, he's a huge loss. He's from that generation that really made history, that that carried history, with them, and transfer their history to a new generation, and their books are available as well. Hopefully, Ali, maybe we should think about having an episode where we look at this generation.
Yeah. Yeah,
This
sure.
lost generation.
Yeah.
You know,
Some of the men, I mean, the men players in the Yemeni politics
right.
in the previous century, and
Right, and not just that generation from the north, from the 1962 revolution. Not just Sinan Abu Lahum, not just Abdullah al-Ahmad, not just Dr. al-Yamani, not just Dr. Abdulaziz al-Makala. He's still in Sana'a with us and everything. So not just that generation, but also from the south.
yeah. But I was talking with some of my fellow colleagues 2 weeks later, and they were talking about this. We have like great people who have passed away, and they left great history. But the new generation, we don't know that much about this history. So we want to dig in to get out such history and to remind the recent
to keep it alive, right? I mean, to keep it alive, to keep that history alive. I mean,
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which. Where you fit in the political spectrum. You still always wonder. Where would Yemen be today if Dr. al-Yamani was still around as a mediator, as a negotiator? Where would al-Islah be if Abdullah al-Ahmar was around? Sheikh Abu Lahum from Bakil, that generation from Bakil tribe. We see Bakil, the role that Bakil is playing in Sana'a with the Houthis, right? With Ansar Allah. So all of this is still very, very important in Yemen, for Yemeni politics.
Yes, absolutely.
And in the south is the same. The people that played major role in the 80s, lead in the 1994 war.
Yeah, sure. We have lost many great people who were like, I mean, pioneers, and they left a big heritage of politics and the good relations that connected the South with the whole world.
Right. Well, today we're in our first episode of Diwan podcast with Ali Mahmoud and myself, Fernando Carvajal, and we welcome you to this little journey of ours, to the little project that we have. Hopefully, we keep your attention and you enjoy the podcast. Our first segment, every episode will open up, and our first segment will be a discussion of the latest news from Yemen. We want to highlight that while many may claim that Yemen is isolated or ignored by the international media, there is actually a lot to read about Yemen every day. I mean, there's a lot to read. It's just takes time to look for that information, for those news. One of the problems I see is in the way that these news are delivered. Whether it's in Arabic or in English or in European languages. How these news are delivered, and you, Ali, since you write for news website, a newspaper in the Gulf and in the region, that there are a lot of Yemeni journalists out there reporting for non-Yemeni outlets, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, Fernando, a point that I will blame especially the Western media covering Yemen. They are. I felt as a journalist and a reporter that I report for non-Arabic outlet. I felt that the Western media outlets they don't work for the Yemeni people. They usually try to focus on angles that serve, specific purposes and go for this political side or for this. They don't work for the sake of the Yemeni citizens or the Yemeni civilians that they are harmed or they are exposed to. Such troubles here amid the war. They work for specific purposes and usually leave the voices of those who are bitten by this war. So I hope we can shed light more or shed more light on the many troubles that the civilians here are facing.
Right. And I think this is the segment that should be our goal in this segment, where we highlight the news, where we discuss, and we'll see right now. But I think a lot of this comes out from that US style suspect, suspicion, that suspect view of media. It also spills into reporting from Yemen. It is always received as being biased, therefore a lot of people ignore the news that come out from Western outlets, for example.
Yes, because as I told you, they work for specific purpose. You don't feel that they are working for the sake of giving voices for those who are beaten by the war.
Right. Well, Ali, let's go. Let's hear the news. What news are we going to discuss from your side?
Fernando, for me, I have been tracking the story of the return of Al Qaeda. This is such alerting news coming from Hadramaut and the plains there in the desert between Hadramaut and Chibwa. It's really, I was really upset hearing from security officers that I just contacted when I reported the story. You read via the National last week. It seems that Al Qaeda came back and is having a toehold back again, and in many areas in Wadi Hadramaut, in Sayon, in Tala'a, and Wadi Sur, and Wadi Hainan, and Ras Huwaira, and Shibam. These places, Al Qaeda affiliates and militants were seen moving. I was sitting with some guys from there, from Tarim yesterday and the day before, and they told me that people are reporting that they see some of these people moving freely, and they move in the daylight, and they are having posts, and they are about to emerge to the public. So it's a problem. It does need an action.
Right, and it's interesting that, your article came out a few days ago, but then just today in the morning, Saturday morning, we saw reports online of the new AQAP leader posting a new video, a lesson, that just came out, and it's the first time in a pretty long while since we've seen any new media coming out from AQAP.
Yeah, yeah, it's really serious. As I told you, Fernando, we haven't been hearing such. I mean,
Mm.
such news, especially
Right,
from Hadramaut. Because I have reported many stories there. I have my own sources there. I dig deep there in the area because I know the Al Qaeda is still, I mean, controlling some posts. But the alarming news coming out from there is the area that these elements is getting bigger and bigger.
okay.
We don't.
Is this local support that is growing, or are
Yes.
people reporting foreigners again coming in?
No, no. I felt from what I hear from the guys there, from the security of. I feel that some tribal, incubation, some tribal backup is given for these elements. They had them. And some military also. They have military support. This is the point. The first military zone belongs to the army. There is not serving well. This is the reality. They are. We have. I have heard from. I have here in the place where I'm working here, and I don't have some Hadrami guys. If I can bring them to participate,
Right,
I will
right,
translate.
right,
Yeah,
right, right,
they can confirm they are living in that areas, and
right,
they are telling me that those people or these elements just go to do their, I mean, whatever, and they come back to the basis of the army.
right,
This
right.
really
Right. Yeah, definitely. This would be a topic that we'll be covering on and off, as part of the news roundup, and then we'll get some experts from Yemen, back again to discuss this. If we have to, we'll do a show. We'll do an
yeah,
episode in Arabic, and so that we can bring some people, from the ground. Definitely.
yeah,
For me, there are interesting news. There's interesting headlines. One thing that we need to keep track of, and we'll be discussing with our guests today, is the UN panel of experts. The UN Security Panel of Experts should be coming out with their report this month. So that should be interesting. Hopefully, we can, analyze once we get a copy of that. We can analyze their report and see what they're highlighting this year. Another news that's important, and we'll discuss this later on with our guests as well, is there was an article quoting or citing Mr. Hafid Moayed, who's a consultant, an advisor to the president, economic consultant now, where he's recommending that the UN Security Council um, investigate corruption in CBY, in the central bank. So this is pretty big news. We'll ask our guests today and see what they think about this, and see where they see the problems. We also have the humanitarian situation, right? Obstacles to delivery, whether it's Taiz, Steel Aden, the south, and the northern areas. There's the discussions on. I'm hearing a lot about the work that the Houthis are doing now with this agency, Skamsha, this umbrella organization that they created to deal with the humanitarian organizations. The lack of funding will pretty soon we'll have a guest that'll help us understand the funding for the humanitarian relief, and the work by NGOs and UN agencies. And then there's COVID, still very under the surface.
yeah,
I just wrote a little article on the updates, and information is still very, very scarce. The Supreme
control, yes.
the Supreme Committee, even though they're reporting online that there's no new cases, you still see a few people dying, from the ones that are in the hospital. So it's
Yeah.
still not over in Yemen. It's still there. It's just
Not
under the
over.
surface.
It's not over. Not over. I confirm. I confirm.
Mm-hmm. And this is just information that we get from the government areas. We still don't know what's going on in the north. The Houthis, Sana'a is still not giving us any information. But the main story that I wanna touch. Another story is Abu Dhabi has made an announcement that they will open the ports to Qatar. So now we have this Emirati Qatari rapprochement, which also plays a role in Yemen. So that should be interesting to track.
Yes.
But my main story that I want to talk about is go back to a major story from May to 2020, and that's the FSO Safar. This oil vessel. Yeah. This oil vessel that's off of Ras Isa. We if our audience recall the media, all these articles that were being published May, June, July of last year, and then again in October, November of 2020, looking at this ticking bomb, this vessel full of oil that is about to that's decaying, and there's a concern that there would be a leak or possibly an accident that will definitely create an environmental disaster. We heard in December that the UN had reached an agreement with the Houthis to be able to get a team into into Ras Isa in Hodeidah to examine the vessel and perform any minimal repairs necessary. But we still don't hear of a solution. It's been over 7 months and we still don't have any player, any actor proposing a practical, realistic solution to this problem. I've wrote an article about this, and other people have reported, heavy information, regarding this issue, as opposed to the media that just touched on the surface, which is, this vessel that could cause an environmental crisis. But the story under it is the fight between the Houthis and the government, the Houthis and the coalition for the oil itself. They're still fighting for who owns the rights to that oil, and that oil has been on the vessel since before the war started, and it's oil that was pumped from fields in Marib and Shabwa Al Jauf by transnational oil companies, by major European oil companies. They're scared because of the liability. If there is an environmental accident, what would be their liability here? But that oil, we know that in 2016 and 2017, the Houthis sold that oil. That oil no longer belongs to Safar or to the Houthis. It belongs to a merchant. And this merchant has been demanding since 2017 to be allowed to bring a vessel to transport that oil out into the market, wherever this merchant wants to sell it. But of course, the Yemeni government doesn't want to release that oil because they want to sell it. And they're worried and they're worried about the profit to the Houthis, but the Houthis have already made a profit. They already sold that oil. And nowadays, now that currently we see that the Houthis are controlling all of Western Al Jauf, basically they just haven't ventured into the open desert, but they're in Western Al Jauf. They've advanced in Marib past Mas base, so they're really controlling most of western and southwestern Marib. They are threatening the city of Marib. Through the south, they could threaten the refinery. So the a lot of the fear, or what I hear from people involved in the oil industry in Yemen and everything, they're fearing that, okay, let's say that they remove the oil from Safar, from the vessel, and then they begin the repairs, and then all of a sudden the FSO Safar is functional. It's fixed. It can function again.
Yeah.
So, will the Houthis then move to take the oil pipeline, right? And then demand that oil be pumped through the pipeline to Ras Isa, and then that they will demand that they be allowed to export oil. So when you look at the politics and everything, the conspiracy here is that it is better to keep the Safar as is, because then Houthis can't profit anymore from oil.
Yeah.
There's no more fights over that.
Seems like it, yes.
Right. So then it's like it's been 7 months since somebody called it a ticking bomb. It's already January. They promised that the team was going to land in Hodeidah in January and inspect between January and February, inspect the vessel and try to address the issues. So we're already in the second, third week of January, and we don't hear anything. So then again, another 2 months are going to pass, and this issue is still there. Nobody.
Yeah. Much has been said, but nothing has been done.
Right.
Regarding this problem. Yeah, we have been hearing lots of buzz on this, but no real action has been taken, neither by the government or by the coalition or by the international community.
Right. Well, those are a couple of the news that we're dealing with, that we're discussing, and hopefully we'll bring some more up to date important news in the upcoming episodes. So now, as our first episode begins, then we're excited about our first guest, our first feature guest. Today we have Mr. Khaled al-Yamani, former foreign minister of Yemen, and Mr. Labib Nasher from New York. They'll be joining us for today. So let's get ready. Can you hear me, Ali? Ali, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Ali. Looks like we are losing Ali for a bit. We'll try to get him. We'll try to get him back. And now I will move to our first guest while we wait for Ali to return. Okay, friends, that rounds up our first news roundup here at Diwan Podcast. We remind you we are recording our first episode a few days, 9 days, well, actually 11 days now, since the new coalition government of Yemen arrived in Aden. We went over the incident on 30 December with Ali Mahmoud, who unfortunately we had technical difficulties in Aden, and we lost him, and we're going to have to proceed without him until he can log back in. Again, like we said in the intro episode, this is one of the difficulties of trying to bring this type of programming direct from Yemen. And it's something that not only us or the media are dealing with, but now imagine how the people on the ground are dealing with this issue every day of access to the internet. Very vital. And so now it's time for our very first interview, our very first feature guest. And I'm really excited about this. Ustad Khaled, buenos días. Millón de gracias. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Muchas gracias, Fernando. Es un placer tenerlo.
You were the first person I thought of when Ali and I started working on this. You were the first person that I thought of because we knew when we were going to launch. We knew what kind of events we were going to have to keep up with. We knew how timely some of these topics would be to discuss with you, and definitely to have your insight, your experience, contributing to our podcast. And you had to be. I'm really thankful that you agreed to be with us as our first featured guest.
You're welcome all the time.
Mr. Khaled al-Yamani, for you, for our audience, for our friends watching, Mr. Khaled al-Yamani was Foreign Minister of Yemen, former ambassador to the United Nations. He served Yemen under the Obama and Trump administrations. He played a role during the negotiations in Stockholm in 2018. It's been almost 20 years since we first met, you and I, back in Orlando at the Mesa conference.
Right.
And again, very, very thankful for you joining us here. We were gonna have Ali and I going back and forth with you on questions, but I'm gonna have to take advantage and take the whole time to myself and have a longer conversation with you. But one of the things that we definitely want to discuss with you is, of course, the news of the new government, to get your view on this. Go back and think about the Stockholm plan. 2 years since you were in Sweden with Mohammed Abdul Salam, the Houthi, Ansar Allah, Motamar, the GPC delegations. Also, another thing that we want to discuss is also timely. It's almost been a month since the sanctions, the US sanctions. This administration sanctioned 5 Houthi security officials in Sana'a. And again, dealing with that, the relationship with Iran from the Houthis that you've been examining over the years. You've been a strong voice against this relationship and the details, but also timely because in the new year we had Abdul Malik al-Ajri tweeting, a threat about the relationship between Sana'a and Tehran, leading up to the anniversary of the Suleiman assassination drone strike. So all of these things I'd like to get to discuss with you in a bit more detail, and hopefully we can get more clear stance. So first of all, your views on the new government. What do you think? Is this a good prospects? Good news?
Yeah, finally the government is in Aden. I would rather say after 6 years with this sporadic presence in Aden. A few months, then total disappearance from Aden, and another after 1 year you see the government going back and forth, and now the government is in Aden. I will explain the foundation of our crisis as the legitimacy based on our absence from our homeland. I think that one of the major challenges for Yemen, for the legitimate government, is if the government is in Aden, if the government is in deliberated areas, we would rather have achieved the goals we put forward from the beginning. But the lack of presence on the ground, leaving the suffering of our people, contributing to the alleviation of their humanitarian situation, working together every day to alleviate that situation. Without that, we can achieve the popular support. We cannot achieve the goals that we put to defeat the coup, the Houthi coup, and recover our statehood. I hope that the Saudi-led coalition, the leadership role of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, will put more pressure on the government institutions to work hard in Aden and in the liberated areas, and to bring about the example of this is what really liberation from the Houthi is meant to be. Everything good for Yemenis, everything. Then you will get the full support of the people, even if they are living in a very difficult situation.
Right. I mean, the idea of waiting a year since the Riyadh Agreement, since November 5th, 2019, until December 18, 2020, for the formation of that coalition government after 2 years of conflict between the STC and the government, President Abdurrahman Mansour Hadi. Do we really believe, can we really expect now that this government is going to calm the tensions, cool the tensions between the STC, the pro-secessionists under Aidarus Azubairi, Hani bin Barak, Governor Lamlas, now in Aden, that the relationship is not going to cool. Now that they're going to warm up to each other, basically, you know, and that we don't expect any more conflict in the near future between the STC forces and the government?
We hope the guarantor is saying that, and we,
Saudi Arabia.
Yes, we hope and we look forward to a very strong cooperation. And although I understand that everyone has his own agenda, STC is working to empower itself in the south and to achieve its own goals. But we explain to the STC that we are not against any ideas that they can bring to the table in the future. But the main aspect of our struggle now is to recover statehood, to defeat the Houthis and bring them into a political mainstream. Then we can talk. Everything will be open for discussion. Now, let me just explain to you, Fernando, what's really happening. The Saudi-led coalition is facing a very challenging moment in the liberated areas, because the fragmentation of the legitimacy is really harming the operations of the coalition, harming the entire idea of recovering the statehood. That's why once we work together to bring every component of that fragmentation together and stick it together to achieve the overall goal, this is the best we can do. So STC is part of the legitimacy. Right. That's why we look at the forces in the western coast as part of the legitimacy, Barak's forces. We look to all the forces in the liberated areas as part of the legitimacy. What we are looking for now is to unite the command of all these forces under the forces of the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Defense. If they are part of the legitimacy, they should be part of the overall approach of our security and military approach.
Right.
Of the
Right. Well, basically, until now, the government in the coalition, let's say Saudi Arabia, had been fighting two conflicts at once. Once against the Houthis in Sana'a, Ansarallah in Sana'a, and the other one against the pro-secessionist STC. But now I see the way that I look at this is, for a year, it's taking the government a year to manage to negotiate a peace agreement with the STC. De-escalate, get into a peace agreement with the STC, but at the same time, the interim capital being Aden is under STC control now, isn't it? The STC Secretary General is the Aden governor. He has not stepped down from the STC. We saw the debate online over the appointment of the Director of Security in Aden, which we saw one director being appointed back in August, soon after the reinterpretation in Riyadh, and then we saw him being replaced under the new coalition government. So when we see the government trying to balance these things with the STC, because let's face it, the STC is vital for the government and Saudi in the fight against the Houthis, right? They
Right.
are part of the Al-Malaka. They are fighting in Azalah. They are fighting in the north in the border region with Saudi Arabia. So, you know, can Aidarus al-Zubaydi, for example, he's not in the government. He's still outside the government. He is still a non-state actor outside the government leading the SDC. Will we see a calmer Aidarus playing more diplomatic role, playing a more positive role, playing a mediator, let's say, playing a mediator role instead of what we saw for the last couple of years, where he basically has, appeared in public in military uniform with troops and everything, and some could say, agitating the situation. Do you think Aidarus can move to this position this year?
Look, we hope that the climate created around the Riyadh Agreement will push wisdom to prevail. We hope that STC, we see STC as a few different tendencies. We have the hawks, and we have those who are very peaceful, very wise, and willing to accommodate and talk and discuss every topic. And we see Lamlas, we see other figures as are part of this very positive environment created of the agreement in Riyadh. We hope that the STC leadership understand that the fight that they are looking for is not its time. It's now time to reunite ranks, to work together with the government, to be more frank in addressing issues that are very challenging in Aden and different areas in the south, and also to the other extension deliberated areas. We hope we cannot think something else, but we don't want to we want all together. I mean, the international community, the Saudis, to send the right message to all different components of the Riyadh Agreement that now it's time to work together. Now it's not time to bring all these grievances and disputes and make it impossible for both of us, because we have a very dangerous enemy.
Right.
That is really, and we saw it active with the rocketing and of the airport, which showing that it's a very, very strong, very decided enemy that will destroy Yemen, because they are looking to prevail and looking to impose their will upon the Yemenis.
Right. I know that I want to touch on this in a little bit, but I know that you've been very active on social media and in your writing concerning this, issue with the Houthis, of labeling them, sanctioning the Houthis, which the Trump administration threatened back in November. But first, do you think, SDC only received 5 seats? I mean, we saw the cabinet shrink from 35 posts with the prime minister down to 24 posts plus the prime minister. So that's a significant decrease, or significant political message there to do that. I've written about this stuff, but the SDC received 5 positions, right, in the government. How does this role that the SDC will play now in the government of the Republic of Yemen, which carries a flag? And then I'll get into this, because there was just a controversy yesterday when pictures emerged of Governor Lamlas with the UN envoy at the airport, and Lamlas, the security detail for the governor, still wearing PDRY patches, not GOI patches, not Republican patches. So, but in this relationship now, again, in the evolution that people may want to see of the SDC, how do you see this play with Iraq? Meaning, I'm still one of those people that claims, the SDC maybe Iraq, but it's not all of Iraq. And Iraq is not all of SDC. We see a lot of activists from the SDC, engaging this narrative that, SDC is Iraq. There is nothing going on in Iraq. But I know people in Lahaj, I know people in Abiyan, Shabwa, Hadramaut, and definitely in Mahra, for example, who have been part of Iraq from the beginning, from the 90s. Not just 2006, not just 2011, but Iraq from since after the civil war, and a lot of them are still in opposition to Aidarus and the STC, silent on the under the surface. Do you see the STC being able to reach out to all factions everywhere, reconcile with Iraq, and bring them into the fold and support their position within the government?
Yeah, look, this is what I keep saying, that wisdom should prevail. Let me tell you that, first of all, the claims of the people from the South are legitimate claims. And I think it's in politics, this we see it everywhere in the world. We see it in Catalonia, in Spain, and we see it everywhere. It's really legitimate, but it should be within the framework of a constitutional process. Other than that, it will be totally a chaotic move. STC, as you mentioned, and this is what I keep telling my friends in STC all the time, they are part of the South. They are part of Iraq, but they are not necessarily all the components of Iraq. They are not the sole representative of the South. Who is giving you this sort of representation, if it's not through referendum or through elections or through popular endorsement? But STC really was created in a very difficult situation when the government was absent from the South and gave some factions of the Iraq the upper hand using their relations with the coalition. And that's why we see STC is now a prominent figure in Iraq. But STC is not, as you mentioned, STC is not present in heavily in other provinces in the South, only in areas close to Aden.
Right.
And that's why they should work. And this is what I keep saying to my friends in STC. They should be open to discussion in the South. They should be the big umbrella, right, embracing all the people of Iraq, right, and bringing bigger discussion, right, with them.
But this is the thing, Ustad. Like the Riyadh agreement in 2019 sort of handed, even though Saudi Arabia took on the mantle of the guarantor now, we don't have that split UAE Saudi because of the Riyadh agreement. Now Saudi Arabia is the primary guarantor, right? But then the Riyadh agreement really legitimized the STC. It's not a constitutional actor. Legitimized the STC, and indirectly, the narrative was that the STC would now be the representative of the South. That's the label that the STC took on after that. Do we see the STC now as the mediator with all the actors in the South, or does President Abdurrabbo, the Prime Minister, still have a responsibility to keep working on this? Who should take the lead in this, the STC or the government?
That's why you see the STC will keep pushing hard to take the monopoly of the South.
Okay.
They will keep pushing hard because this is within the instinct of every political movement to empower itself. But I hope that they understand that it's not time to fight for something that not the South, not every person in the South is supportive to the idea. Because I know that there is a lot of people in the South that are still supportive of the idea of unity, some form of federal structure, some form of local independence in areas of the South. But STC will keep pushing, and we hope if wisdom prevail, it's logic that we give STC enough room for them to talk their rhetorics. But if they are not imposing their rhetorics upon others, that will be welcomed all the time. Now, is STC gaining? Yes, STC gaining. STC gaining through violence, and STC gained that recognition in the Riyadh Agreement. But the Riyadh Agreement in nowhere is mentioning STC as the legitimate representative of the South. But we could
Right.
imply that STC is putting itself in that but also the government. That's why when you see the composition of the government, it should be 50-50, north and south. It's actually more south to north now. It's 60-40 almost, from the south to 40 from the north. But nevertheless, we wanted that Riyadh agreement to be functional, to be working, and we supported the idea, even if the government will delegate some of its authorities for STC. It doesn't mean that we recognize that STC is the legitimacy in the south. STC is part of the legitimacy in Yemen. So if they understand this complication, we can work together and we can all together empower ourselves and liberate Yemen from the pro-Iranian Houthis.
Right, Ustad. Now a shift to the north, basically, the Stockholm Plan. You know, all of this. If we look 2 years ago to December 2018, what you saw, what happened in the high expectations that the Stockholm Plan created in everyone's eyes. What have we seen? What are you recalling? I want to get your view on what's happened in the last couple of years first, before I ask you about specifics on the Houthis and what they've done. What are your views regarding the Stockholm Plan since December 2018?
It's we should recognize, first of all, that Stockholm was the only agreement signed between the government and the Houthis in anything at all. And also we look at 6 years of warring, and we see in every 2 years there is an attempt to reach negotiated peace. In the beginning, it was the first days of the war, August, the first attempt in Geneva, and it was not even talking. It was just a show where everyone was showing its total denial of exchange of ideas on how to deal with the end of the war.
Right. Right.
Then after 2 years, we went to Kuwait. Then after another 2 years, we went to Stockholm. So now we are, after 2 years of Stockholm, we are waiting to see why Stockholm was pushed hard in the beginning. Then what happened to everyone just to let Stockholm let go that great ideas. I was heavily criticized, in the social media, that I'm the one who really am the traitor of Yemen. I contributed to giving the Houthis Hodeidah, and Hodeidah was almost in our hand. We were 3 kilometers from the seaport of Hodeidah, and because of that, I agreed. And everyone knows that I'm just a chief negotiator. I'm not the one who will take the final decision. The final decision was taken by the president of the republic and the coalition, and they were under a lot of pressure from
right.
our friends in the Security Council. The permanent members of the Security Council put more efforts to reach the Stockholm Agreement.
Did the Stockholm strengthen after 2 years? I mean, when we look back 2 years from from Stockholm, since you were in Sweden, did the Stockholm Agreement, everything, the environment from this plan, I like to call it a plan, not an agreement, but from this plan, did it serve to strengthen the Houthis? Do you think Houthis strengthened their position since December 2018? Or did the government actually achieve some sort of progress in taking, in weakening the Houthis, whether it's economically or politically or militarily?
If we say that nothing happened in Hodeidah, means we are approving your idea of strengthening the Houthis, because nothing happened in Hodeidah. But the worst of the scenarios, that the legitimacy forces, they are not present. Theoretically, Tariq is not under the forces of the Ministry of Defense. So the forces working in that area, they are not, although they are part of the coalition, but they are not part of the government forces. So it's really, I mean, when you see the outcome, you see we are weakening our positions. The Houthis having more leverage now in Hodeidah. But I am not blaming the coalition. I'm not blaming the government. I'm not thinking that the Houthis can be more articulated in Hodeidah without that failure of international commitment. What happened to that commitment of the five?
Right.
They made. I mean, I remember General Mattis was telling us that he will put all his pressure and he will be. Sending all the military inoperabilities to strengthen the possibility of implementation of the Stockholm Agreement. What happened to that brilliant idea? Right. I mean, when I studied today, I prepared a policy paper for my work, and I said an idea that can still be functioning today. Why we are not taking that idea in the absence of the political deal? The people, they are not accepting the joint declaration of the Special Envoy. Why they are not accepting the political declaration is a step towards achieving peace, because it will bring three things: cessation of hostilities, some trust-building measures, and the third one will be the final talks.
Right.
Why we are not accepting that? Right. Okay, if we are not working on that, why we are not strengthening the possibility of implementing the Stockholm Agreement? That is a possibility. We still we have all the interoperabilities of the United Nations Security Council. We have resolutions. We have a political mission created in Hodeidah, which is the Hodeidah Agreement political mission that General Goha is a leader. And we spent for that in the last 2 years more than $110 million to do what? Even the committees they established, the 5 points, security points, are not working. The Joint Commission is not working. Why?
Right. No, and I want to get into this with you with the last topic, which is your views on the Biden administration, but keeping it within the Stockholm plan. Again, the strength of the Houthis, there's no change on the ground. Now you have, I just started researching for a paper for our next episode on Skamsha, this new organization, relatively new organization by in Sana'a, which, will be an umbrella for all these international organizations or all the dealings with humanitarian response. So, back in when the Stockholm plan was written, came out, I wrote a paper about how, the Houthis had already won Hodeidah. They could sign whatever anybody wanted. They had already won Hodeidah because they controlled the process from the minute a ship landed in the Hodeidah port, taxation, everything, to transport to everything. That whole line, the whole assembly line, is under control of the Houthis. Anyone that wants to do business in the north is under a Houthi umbrella, which then creates this profits to go up. So now with Skamsha, and hopefully we can get into this in another episode, or you and I can exchange later. I'm hearing that the process is tightening. They're tightening their control. And then the UN agencies and the INGOs, they're going to have a tougher time in explaining their relationship with Sana'a. So then this is where I want to bring the conversation to the sanctions on the Houthis.
I agree. First, if you may allow me, I agree that for the Stockholm Agreement, we need to have another discussion, because it's really a vast issues that we need to go through. We need to go through the agreement, the level of implementation, the political mission, what's happening with UNVIM. That is very important mechanism that is not taking any function, not even in Djibouti, not even in Hodeidah. What's happening? Why?
Never mind Salif or Ras Isa.
Ras Isa, they're still, and in addition to all that, the speeding up of all these military operations of the Houthis and terrorist attacks in the southern part of the Red Sea. So
right.
we created Hodeidah to stop that.
Right.
And after 2 years, we are having more military presence of the pro-Iranian Houthis in the Red Sea, attacking even positions to the north, close to Jeddah, in the Kingdom of Arabia.
Right. So if the Stockholm Agreement didn't manage to bring the parties together, then this idea of sanctioning the Houthis, Abdul Malik, Abu Ali, Abdul Khalik, they've been sanctioned since 2015, and nothing has changed. There's been no impact on any of this. Saudi Arabia issued the most wanted list. The only person that's been sort of taken out by this most wanted list was Salah Samad, the president of the Supreme Council. But and so sanctions, do you see them as having any impact? I know that you and you're not as vocal as Minister Mohammed al-Yamani when it comes to sanctions on the Houthis, but do you see any more sanctions making an impact?
Look, sanctions are really nothing without enforcement. I mean, you know that in international law. If you have really the leverage over the sort of enforcing any sort of sanctions, otherwise there is no need to put sanctions. I mean, now with Iran, the international community sanctioned the regime in Iran. But you see, so many countries are dealing with Iran, and they are even countries within the framework of opposing Iran and voicing out against Iran every day, and of course in the Gulf are being used by Iran. The Far East is being used for Iran. All the capitals, the Iranian capitals, are in Southeast Asia, moving freely, and other countries in the world, also in addition to Russia and China. So sanctions are not functional if there is no way to impose them and there is no way to enforce them. So this is the idea. On these Houthi sanctions, or on the listing Houthis as a terrorist group, let me tell you, are the Houthis terrorists? The first question. Okay, those who are attacking civilian institutions like the Aden airport, or areas in Saudi Arabia, attacking the oil pipes and oil facilities, they are terrorists in concept in international law. Those who are not non-state actors, that they are working with violent methods, they are terrorists. I mean, there is a lot of classification in international law. Who might be a terrorist? Who might be?
Right. But then we give room to Houthis to do the same and start listing the coalition or the government for doing the same.
I agree with you. Now, but if we are talking peace with the Houthis and we are looking forward to jointly bring peace in Yemen, and we accept them as a political movement, and we want them to be part of the mainstream politics in Yemen, are we endangering the possibilities of political talks if we put them in the terrorist group list? This is the only difference that we have with the outgoing administration. But we think that using the idea as a tool of pressure on the Houthis by explaining that everything they do is within the international nomination of a terrorist group, and they should think seriously about what they are doing to Yemen and what they are doing to their movement if they want to prevail in Yemen as a political movement.
Right, right. I mean, you know, one of the discussions I've had with Yemenis from the south or from the north, you know, if we get into, I've asked, you know, this is one of the themes that we want since our introductory episode is to take this theme, you know, the attack in Aden, was it a terrorist act or was it an act of war? And this comes up because, you know, if we go all the way back to 2015, you know, the war, what what we saw in Aden in 2015, what we saw in Taiz in 2015, but also what we saw in Sana'a with the targeting of the funeral in Roy Shan. So if we come out and we say, or anybody says, you know, the attack on Aden airport was terrorism, then the Houthis will say, well, then what was the attack on Roy Shan's funeral? Right, and then that opens up, as you say, you know, the idea of how do you engage these peace talks when there is this constant back and forth accusation and escalation at the same time. So,
Yeah.
what
There is slight difference in international law.
Give me a second. You were muted, Ustad.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's a sir. Okay. Now the coalition after the attacks in this meeting or the social meeting or the social gathering in Sana'a, they did everything required in international law to clear itself. They created the commission of investigation. They paid for the damages, and they created all the international recognized environment or characteristics to recognize that it was a collateral damage. But is the attack on the Aden airport was really collateral damage from the Houthis? They were attacking something else, and then suddenly it went to a civilian airport. Where is the military bases next to the airport and all this stuff? It was really a targeted attack, and it was targeting the government of Yemen coming back to Aden. There is no way that. But I'm not an investigator. I can't tell you that. No. Finally, we have really the blueprint of Houthis, and this commander issued that order, and they were coming from Al Janad airport and all this stuff. But I'm telling you, it's a terrorist act, fully recognized in international law as a terrorist act.
Okay, thank you. And now to wrap it up, discussion on the Biden administration. You and I had a talk right before I wrote my article, you know, where I wrote this piece, the headline, cautiously optimistic, after so many years of this war, almost 6 years of the war, you know, you have to be, you can't be optimistic of change because you just don't think that it can get worse, but then you see that it gets worse all of a sudden. So you and I, different opinions back then in late November, right after the election, where I said that I was a little bit optimistic, and you had your doubts. But now that we're so far, almost a week into, or by the time this episode comes out, he'll be president. Joe Biden will be president. How do you see now that the national security team, for example, has been formed, is taking shape? How do you see the coming administration when it comes to the war in Yemen? Are you optimistic now, slightly more optimistic than back in November, or you still have your doubts?
Of course, I mentioned that in my discussion, in my articles, my exposition into the Washington Center when I was talking to the event on the Biden administration, Yemen and the Biden administration. I mentioned that I have some cautiousness on how Yemen will be dealt with in the priorities of this administration. And today, I'm more cautious than 1 month ago, because when you see the legacy of the Trump administration, you can understand that the Biden administration will be having a lot of homework and domestic issues, and how to remedy this difficult situation within the United States, and how to recover its name with its major allies, and how to regain its leadership role with the cross-Atlantic alliance. And it's really challenging.
Right.
But I do believe that the basic uh, democratic values and human rights values of the U.S. foreign policy will be recovered, and there will be a major role for the State Department and those who are making policies and studying all alternatives to function, because this will not be anymore a one-man show.
Right.
Foreign policy.
Right. No, and this is one of the points that I made in my article back then in November, that, we hope that because of the legacy of Biden and the Obama administration and how they dealt with foreign policy, with Secretary Kerry and his team, that we would definitely see a very noticeable change in tactics, right? We would no longer see, a one-man show in foreign policy through Jared Kushner, for example, that everything was through him, not really through the State Department or the military, etc. But one of the things that I pointed out in my interviews and in my articles since was that for this particular coming administration, that perhaps because of these mounting challenges domestically that you mentioned, is it a good idea to propose that President Biden appoints a special envoy from the U.S. to the Yemen conflict, as the U.S. has done, elsewhere for Syria, on Iran, on Libya? Do you think that because we know that the Biden administration is kind of looking like a continuation from the Obama administration because of the people and the approach to foreign policy and security affairs, do you think that would be helpful if the president appoints a special envoy that really focuses on all things in the conflict?
Yeah. Let me first of all, I disagree in the terms of that this administration will be a continuation of Obama administration, because there is a gap in between that complicated a lot of issues. Even if this administration is willing to continue the same route, they will have to address it in a different way. So this is the question. Now, I do believe, and this is what we are working with the Yemeni diaspora, or the U.S. American Yemenis, with this administration, the new administration, that really we need more focus. If we see the terminology used by the new administration, what Biden is saying, that he will end the support to the Saudi coalition in this war. He never mentioned that he will end the war in Yemen, or he will. But I think as an extension of this concept, he ultimately need to address the situation in Yemen and end the war in Yemen. By nominating a special envoy, this will help all institutions of the new administration and all agencies to work together with that special envoy to send the right signal to the coalition, to the Yemeni government, to the Houthis, and to all the other components on the ground, that United States is interested in continuing the fight against terrorism in Yemen. United States cannot accept interference of Iran into Yemeni affairs.
Right.
United States would ask Houthis, and also I do believe that now the administration and the new administration is having some contacts with the Houthis in Muscat, in other areas, to understand how far the Houthis can go in terms of this.
In this position, I've argued that by appointing a special envoy, it would also allow the U.S. to engage Iran, just like they did with Kerry during the nuclear negotiations. this is something that the ambassador, for example, has not been able to do because under this administration. But I mean, yes, we know that there's been some diplomatic contacts in Muscat, directly with between the U.S. Department, the military, and Houthis like Abdul Salam or others. But I think that a special envoy will act like this umbrella that you just described, right, to coordinate the approach and also help in a broader sense, because the war in Yemen is not just isolated there. It really does involve the region, doesn't it? It really does involve various actors in the region, and it affects and it provides a playground for all of these actors to come in and clash. So, I mean, we hope that something like this could really help move forward, not just the end of the assistance, the military assistance, because I assume that the U.S. will remain in the control room in Riyadh, but the military assistance to the coalition.
I do agree. I mean, the idea that this administration will bring about antagonistic relations with Saudis, and it's nonsense.
Right.
I mean, the relations between Saudi Arabia and the United States is a strategic one.
Right.
And Saudi Arabia is a very vital component of this strategic approach of the United States global politics.
Right.
So I disagree with everyone thinking no, the administration, the outgoing administration was very close friend to the countries in the region, and this administration will bring about it's like dictating issue. No, it's not real. But we need to work together. We think that the new administration will be working with the Saudis and working with the government of Yemen and working with all the components of the ground, even the regional components of that, the bigger regional components, because Yemen is a war that is having a regional implication. It's not only a domestic closed war or regional war or small town conflict. It's really having a regional impact.
Right.
And having Yemen controlling the straits in the southern Red Sea and also the
Gulf of Aden,
Caribbean and the Gulf, it's vital for every country in the region to work for peace in Yemen But what we need to do is putting more pressure on every component of the conflict inside Yemen to sit down and to agree on how to finish the job and reach the durable peace and
Right. Well, Ustad, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you being here with us, taking your time, and really, helping us launch this podcast. Hopefully, I know we'll definitely ask you to come back and help us as things move along, and get your opinion on the events and how you see things progressing, or, God forbid, deeper conflict. I really appreciate your friendship for a very long time. Thank you for your willingness to always listen to my crazy ideas, my crazy talk, and for your great input that always provides me some really good insight and a different perspective. I really appreciate you being here with us today, Ustad. Muchas gracias. Nos vemos pronto.
A cualquier tiempo estoy dispuesto. Always ready to engage, and I think this idea is a brilliant idea. Will bring more discussion and will bring many components to that discussion, and it will be helpful to at least clarify the way forward.
Thank you very much, Ustad. Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.